Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And today is a very special episode. Today is January 27th, which is my 36th birthday. And also today is my final episode of the Daily Objective. That's right. You heard me right. It's my 36th birthday. Maybe we can talk about that, what that means. Explore 36 from a number of cultural angles and what are birthdays anyway when you think about it. Which calendar, by the way, is that? The Western calendar? Yeah, jokes aside. Yeah, I did come to the decision that my time on the Daily Objective has been very positive, and we'll be talking about that today. But I am leaving the show. I am leaving the network. Today is my final episode. And I guess I'll sort of briefly, vaguely. I like how the first 5 comments in the chat room are like, "Oh, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday." Then no, but I'll sort of brush upon the kind of what went into this decision in a very agreeable, nice way. That there's no drama, there's nothing negative, but you guys deserve some type of explanation. So a certain aspect of it is logistic. This show is at 12 noon on weekdays in my time zone, and that really kind of cuts right in the middle of the day. It's very hard, obviously, to make plans and to do other things and to travel and all that without always having in mind I need to be somewhere at noon or whatever it is. You get it. So there's that aspect of it for sure. And when this show began, it was 10 a.m. local time when I was in California, which is much, it's sort of better because, it's like the morning. So you get it out of the way and then you got the rest of the day. And also it was lockdowns back then. We were in lockdowns. So it's like, where was I going anyway? And I was waking up crazy early anyway at that time because my sleep was very kind of light. I was very stressed, at least psychosomatically. I seem to be very restless during the lockdowns. So I was kind of waking up crazy early anyway. I didn't have to worry about, needing to wake up early to do the show at 10 a.m. So, there's the logistical aspect. This is not, it's to have to do this several days a week several days a week is, it was always kind of had a shelf life, I think. And in another sort of on a more of a spiritual level, I kind of, I should be doing my own thing, I think. I've come to that decision. I think being on a network was always kind of awkward for me. When you're on a network, you're sort of representing a network. You're representing other people. You're representing other people's decisions. You're sort of committed to this brand. And that's just not really me. I was always just I like doing my own thing. So, that's kind of my, that's sort of like a spiritual aspect of this as opposed to logistical. And, and then when it comes to objectivism, especially because this philosophy and the author for whom this network is named, Ayn Rand, is so important to me, it's like an extra delicate thing, that I'm representing and promoting a network and, I'm promoting a brand that has to do with something so important to me. So it's extra controversial in my mind to be participating in a network. So it was always kind of like semi-awkward for me. Now, when we started doing this show, this channel was very, very much less known. There was hardly any traffic because there was hardly any content. And, and we started doing this show and, the channel grew a little bit, certainly among fans of Ayn Rand. And next thing, we're doing these celebratory episodes, commemorate 100 episodes, and we got the who's who of the objectivist intellectual class, on live stream with us. And I'm just like, okay, this is in some respects an amazing opportunity, and I'm honored. And in another respect, it's like I'm not sure I want to be doing this, or like I'm not sure this is me, or put it this way, I'm not sure this is what I want to be doing forever or for very long. And I've always said, or I think a couple of times I said, when we would do one of these celebratory, 200th episode, whatever it is, or 2-year episode anniversary type thing, I would say, like, the Daily Objective is something special that, you know, us four main co-hosts did here. We built this, and it's not written in stone that it's going to always be the four of us. You know, there's going to be other guest co-hosts, permanent co-hosts coming and going. Who knows, right? So I've always kind of had that in the back of my mind, and I think this was kind of a long time coming. So those are kind of the both logistical and spiritual components to what went into this decision. This was my decision. Let's be very clear. I'm very appreciated and wanted on this network by the powers that be, and, you know, clearly by a lot of you who watch or listen to the content. This was definitely my decision, and it was not an easy one. And, you know, no big decision should ever be obviously taken lightly. And it should, you know, this is kind of me describing what I did, and, you know, and I suggest you do the same with your own choices. Take time to think about it. And then once you do make a decision, you know, give the boss some notice. You know, don't disappear overnight. You say, okay, here's what, let's look at the calendar, and let's make this as, you know, as easy on all of us as possible. All right. Kirk Wilcox with $2 says happy birthday. Michael with $10 says happy birthday and thank you. Brian Bonar with $5. Thank you for that. Wes with $20 says sad to see you go, but it's great to hear you are going to do your own thing. Good luck. Thanks. So, yeah, this is, you know, it's been an amazing experience. So I wanted to spend the rest of the episode today kind of going down memory lane, maybe talking about some of my, you know, favorite memories that happen to come to mind as I look back at the last 2 or 3 years, I guess 2.5, 3 years, something like that. Thank you, Rhett, for the $9.99 as well. And Bradley with $5.99 says, you do you, Rucka. Thank you for your time. Thanks, guys. And, you know, if you can't live without me, I do have my own live streaming channel. I reluctantly plug it even on my way out, but I do my own live streams. The channel is called Rucka Live. It's a bit more satirical often. It's a bit more kind of a stream of consciousness, sort of free flow at times. But, you know, I've been trying to kind of make it more topical and sort of disciplined and kind of focusing on a topic each live stream. And if a few of you happen to show up over there and, you know, kind of participate by, you know, with certain questions or requests for topics, then, you know, who knows, it could, you know, obviously become a little bit more topical and focused. So, you know, you could find me over there. It's Rucka Live. And I, you know, and the other disclaimer, in addition to it being a little bit more loose with the stream of consciousness, I'm a bit more blunt than you've seen me over here. Like, I mean, I love the chat room. I love pretty much everyone, who participates here. But I also, you know, I'm not that blunt. So, like, if I see, I don't know, what I feel is like a cringy, objectivist, virtue signaling type of, you know, well, we live in an irrational society. Why won't they all become objectivist already? Where can I find an objectivist girlfriend? I have a very low tolerance for that shit. Excuse my language. But why do I have a low tolerance for the above, by the way? You'll find out, I guess, or I'll sort of tell you now. I find these things to be, sophomoric, painting with a broad brush, painting the world. It's a coping mechanism. And objectivism, the greatest gift to man, can be, like any technology, used for evil. And people certainly cope. Certainly people certainly rationalize. And you know, if you're gonna make excuses, if you're afraid to try, if you're afraid to work on yourself, and you're going to say, oh, the world is so bad, and, you know, I would be doing great in life, but for the world, but for the irrational society. If you come, you know, chatting that type of thing around me, I think you'll get my honest opinion, all to the positive goal of showing you that there's a better way. Apollo Zeus with 2 pounds and some wonderful emojis. And I think I read Bradley's as well. Thank you for that. Okay, now we got some time left to go through some favorite memories and stuff. Again, if you think of anything that took place in the last, during my tenure on this show, definitely chat and or super chat. Jonathan Honig with $2 says, We never got to say goodbye. I mean, that's a very sad, but I will be saying, some very nice words about my co-host here today. Let's go back to 2020. Was it? Yeah, 2020. COVID-19 for whom COVID-19 named for 2019 was really taking effect in early 2020. I was like everyone living in lockdown in California. Times were a-changing, and there was this feeling of like all bets are off. The world you knew, you mustn't take for granted. And lockdowns were a shocking thing. And then the violence in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing was just such an incredibly disheartening thing for me. I had been in love with Los Angeles since I first visited in 2010. And it became like my long-term goal to move to LA. And a big motivation for cleaning up my act, kicking bad habits and really, really pushing myself to succeed, was motivated by this vision of someday moving to LA. And then I did move to LA. And then that was a very kind of shocking cultural, change, right? You're in this new city, you hardly know anyone. But it was exciting. And I just, I had such a wonderful experience moving there, living there, getting adjusted. I learned so much and grew so much. And now here we were, 2020, and I'm watching people my age, transplants like me, many of whom moved to LA to chase their dream, out in the streets, burning down small businesses. And I know we love big business and small business alike. We love honest business, but I mean, there is a little bit of merit to the emphasizing of that it's a small business, because it's like, this is like a person's, just a concretization of one person or a couple people's hard work and chasing of their dream, just shattered and burnt down. And it destroyed more than that property. It destroyed people's confidence in knowing that we live in a community, we live in a civilization, we live in a place where that won't happen. So, the BLM related civil unrest, as it was called, it definitely added to this feeling of like all bets are off. You can't take anything for granted. So that's what I was going through, and I got a call from Lord Emperor Razi, who you know from this channel. He's sort of the he's not sort of, he is the creator and person in charge of the Ayn Rand Center UK. And he called me up and he said, all right, here's what we're thinking of doing. Like basically you and Nikos, who I vaguely knew who Nikos was. I had seen a couple of videos, him on stage at some objectivist related events. It was probably Ayn Rand Con in Prague or one of those Eastern former bloc places. Excuse me. I learned many things in my life, but European geography is not one of them. So I kind of knew who he was, but so Razi said, here's what we want to do. If you're interested, it would be, like 20 minutes, a few days a week. I don't remember I think we might have started this doing 5 days a week, actually. Like me and Nikos 5 days in a row, or maybe it was 4 days. I don't remember. At some point it became that that it changed over time. Anyway, I think it was basically just me and Nikos. Gloria Alvarez was also like a reoccurring host, and I think that was basically it. Maybe again, it's all kind of blurry, but yeah, like we did. I think the first episode, if I recall, was about the BLM civil unrest, and I think I remember what I said. I said George Floyd needs to live in a world where where property is protected, where businesses are not violated, right? So it's not only that, we should be outraged at a person being suffocated by a police officer. It's also like, what kind of world do people need to live in when they're not being suffocated, right? Like, life is not simply about not being choked. Life is about the ability and freedom and liberty to pursue the good, to be moral, to pursue the life you want. So that's my memory of the very first episode. Jumping over to the chat room, Mark Moses has been a member for 6 months, and he says, Rucka, we hardly knew you. And Kirk with $5 says, I went from saying, what are you, on the left, to literally, I left. ever the witty Kirk Wilcox. And then Rhett with $9.99 says, you are, okay, wow, this is a long one. He goes, you are one of the, I didn't know you can say this much text with $9.99. Let me take a sip of my tea. I'm going to lose my voice reading this one. He says, you are one of the preeminent objectivists of all time and musical legend of a generation. All right, I agree with that last part. He goes, will you ever integrate these? On ARCUK, you're like Dominique, writing and then sneaking to Rourke's apartment. Listen, Rhett, thank you. There's a lot happening in that I think like maybe can be unpacked and untangled. I definitely appreciate the love. But you know, it's like, this is the type of thing where like when you say this type of thing to me, I go, okay, let's sit down and talk about this. Like, what's going on here? Like, you're getting a little bit carried away, or it's almost like you're replacing poetry and metaphor to reality itself. And thank you. You know, preeminent objectivist. I don't even know what preeminent even means. I know it's like a good thing. It's a top thing, but you know, objectivism is a philosophy. Philosophy is a very, very complex study. It's a science, whatever it is. It's a discipline. No less complicated than medicine and rocket science. And some people truly dedicated their brain and mind power to philosophy. But, you know, I'm happy and proud to say I love this philosophy. I care about it. I've studied it as far as I've had sort of the time and focus, and you know, it's an ongoing source of power and empowerment. Marilyn with $5 says, I missed the first part. You're leaving? Sad. Marilyn, how can you miss the first part of the show? Yeah, but I'm not going to repeat it all now. Well, I will repeat it all now. Why not? There's a logistical aspect. It's, you know, it's 12 noon in my time zone. It's a little bit inconvenient. And also, I'm kind of feeling like doing my own thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's been kind of a long time coming. I wasn't really cut out for this. Kind of like my good friend, Stephen S. Crowder, who, you know, the Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring realized this guy was meant to do his own thing. Kind of like that. So, you know, this is not goodbye. It really is goodbye. But hey, I could come back and visit sometimes. What was I talking about before this? Oh yeah. So thanks. I mean, so Rhett, thank you for that super chat. I really don't understand the whole Dominique sneaking to Rourke's apartment. Maybe it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but you know, even when you're singing my praises, I say we want to be very careful and stay grounded and remember that like reality comes first, and then we conceptualize it with philosophy, right? Like we induct. Philosophy is inductive. We observe and we live in reality. Really, the people you know in real life are like kind of, in a very important sense, more important than any character, right? In another sense, art is super important as well. You know, it's a big topic. But here's another point. If you're saying these things and I don't really understand what you're trying to say or where you're coming from, and I don't know what you look like and what you're like in person, it makes me think you're going a little bit off the deep end, and we don't want that. We don't want to be down a rabbit hole. So I hate to respond to your praise with sort of light criticism, but this is kind of what you get with me, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier. It's all towards a positive purpose, but it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of what I want to, it's kind of what I do. Jeff with 10 Canadian dollars says, gonna miss you, sir. Here's this $10 Canadian. That's $7.50 US for you. Oh, well, thank you. And the network appreciates all of your super chats today. All right. So it was, there was like that first, you know, episode I recall. Soon after that, I remember doing an episode with Johan Norberg, who I never really heard of, but I sort of understood him to be like a pretty big author, you know, about like progress and sort of a pro-liberty, pro-technology guy. And Gloria Alvarez was on that episode as well. And the topic was like Sweden, right? Like, oh, Sweden is socialist, right? Like, why can't we be more like Sweden? And, it was a bit of this was all very new to me. I was not in the habit of going live on the internet and talking philosophy or about anything for that matter. And here I am interviewing two people at once. So it was like I was really taking a leap into the unknown and challenging myself. And to be able to say I went from there to a place where now, I show up, we have a guest, I sort of wing it, we have fun, we end it, I go about my day, that it's become kind of second nature is, really cool to reflect on. And maybe it inspires some of you at home to sort of take a challenge and delve into the unknown and the unfamiliar and watch your second nature transform as well. I remember in that episode, Johan said, he goes, yes, Sweden is a wealthy country, but before they were socialists, they were a very wealthy country. See what he did there? And I said, yeah, I've heard a version of that joke that goes, a man saying, when I got married, my wife made me a millionaire. Before I married her, I was a multi-millionaire. So there's a nice little joke for you. You use that one at the bar and watch the ladies. Well, maybe tell that one to the fellas, I suppose. I remember that then like me and Nikos used to go at it. We had our early sort of era of the show, I think was basically just me and Nikos for a while. And I'm happy to say I was the voice of prudence as these lockdowns were taking place, as, we had like episodes titled like, are we in East Germany now? I said, certainly not. You got to be kidding me, folks. I said, East Germany. Do you know what totalitarianism is, folks? I mean, Jesus Christ. Do I even need to explain this? Like, we're better than this, I basically said. And look, as bad as lockdowns were and as scary as they are in indicating what the future might look like, come on, folks. You're sitting in your apartment, watching Netflix, ordering stuff on Amazon, ordering restaurant food, comparing yourself to East Germany, comparing yourself to the Soviet Union. Folks, I mean, I expect better. So I made that point clear. And I'm happy to say that, prudence is something I've gotten better at in my life. It's hard. It's hard to be prudent when you have this exciting philosophy, this philosophy that seems to have all the answers to everything now. But then I think if you're earnest enough, you end up kind of realizing what Ayn Rand wrote as a 70-year-old woman is not something you can quite say with confidence as a much younger person who is learning her philosophy secondhanded. And secondhanded is not meant to be a bad thing, but obviously she developed her philosophy over a lifetime, and here we are kind of consuming the finished product. So you gotta cool it, I say. And when you go to the, to the big shot objectivist training ground, you find out real quick that nobody's going to be impressed by you wagging your finger and saying, we live in an irrational, nihilistic society. Oh, can you demonstrate that to me? Can you prove that to me from the ground up, starting with observations and factor in all the evidence available? Like, you got to really, really have some balls to make that kind of generalization if you're going to be able to play with the big boys. Let's jump back to the super chats. Zalmi with 99 says, I guess we share a birthday. Are you serious? Or do we really share a birthday and you just noticed that now? Theme Master with £5 says, thanks. Oh, thank you. Wyatt with $2 says, was it that you had less affinity with the new host? Not at all. Not at all. I mean, and if that were the case, why? I mean, it's been, the early era with just Nikos was so like right now just seems like a blip on the radar, right? It feels like Jonathan and Mark have been here forever. So that's not at all it. I like everybody. I had a great time. Chandlar with $5 says, thanks for being the most awesome regular host on my favorite objectivist talk show. You're a natural. Hope you can show up as a guest. Marilyn with $5 says, it's been good. Happy birthday. Wishing you the best. Thank you, Marilyn. Little moment for Marilyn here, who is, she believed in us from the start. She believed in us. She supported us with her comments, with her super chats. And, this network, this show is Marioline's as well. All right. So, so I guess that brings us over to the sort of next, phase 2 of the show. We got 2 new co-hosts, Jonathan Hoenig and Mark Pellegrino. Jonathan Hoenig is a guy I used to watch on Fox News here. And the fact I used to watch Fox News is kind of embarrassing for me. I'm sure plenty of you watch Fox, no offense, but to me, it's embarrassing. But Jonathan was the good guy, because it was like a finance show and he was making the case for actual capitalism, actual liberty. And he was speaking in terms of principles. So something about Mr. Hoenig struck me early on when I used to watch him. I was like, this guy doesn't sound like your run-of-the-mill conservative or even the average libertarian out there. Like, this guy, there's something different about him. And then at some point I noticed, he tweets about objectivism and he's, hanging around Yaron Brook and all this stuff. So, wow. An objectivist on TV shouting down other pundits about capitalism. This was an historical first, folks. This was a cable news first. This was the world changing. Jonathan Hoenig was a guy, so he was a guy I was a fan of. And then to be able to be his friend and to work with him on a regular basis is, one of the many wonderful things that have come to be. Speaking of history, I think we've done something historical here. And because, objectivism is such a young philosophy and such a small group of people that take it seriously. This is the first time, I think, like a handful of students said, let's have a conversation, about the news or about a subject. And there's like kind of an audience. So it's kind of like an improv theater type thing, or it's improv when me and Mark Pellegrino do the show. That's improv. It's very much sketch comedy when Jonathan or Nikos host, because they're prepared. They've been reading, volumes in advance, or in Jonathan's case, preparing a PowerPoint presentation. And, Jonathan, so that's Jonathan, very cool to be able to work with him. And Mark Pellegrino, obviously I knew of him because he's, a famous actor. But yeah, he's done so many big shows I haven't actually watched. I did have a moment that comes to mind here on the show when we had a guest on who was like a big Pellegrino fan. And then someone in the chat room said, my favorite Pellegrino film is Big Lebowski. And I was like, what? You were that? I like Googled it. You were the guy who dunked Jeff Bridges' head in the toilet. Like that was a moment for me growing up. That movie, I was whatever. I didn't bring this up to Pellegrino in terms of the age, because that's, I don't know. I don't like to emphasize that, because it's almost like you're calling somebody old by saying I grew up, with your content. But not that I'm sensitive to that type of remark or anything. But that was a cool moment as a kid. Like, I was like 12 or 13 discovering my own manhood. And here's this badass guy, just dunking Jeff Bridges' head into the toilet and kicking his butt. That was like, this guy's cool. There you go. The image of a cool guy. Mark Pellegrino, 1998. So to be doing a podcast with him and not even realizing he was that guy was a pretty cool moment. But yeah, we had early on, I remember it was he was felt like a bit of a tough nut to crack, but we winged it. We started with the conversations, got more and more comfortable and cool. And, we got to a point where, me and Mark had a lot of fun, funny, memorable episodes together. And, that's really cool. So how many people could say they have a hit show with Mark Pellegrino? So that's been just a wonderful friendship and, intellectual opportunity as well. So yeah, I guess we can jump back to the super chat. Geez, you guys are generous today. Robert with $20 says, as an American of Syrian descent, I'm fully prepared to take over. I've got a few humorous and insightful music parodies ready to go. Whoops, wait, which channel is this? Seriously, all the best on your future endeavors. Thank you. Free Trade with 50 Swedish krones says, sad to see you go. You've produced a lot of insightful commentary and comic relief on these shows. Best of luck with your future endeavors. Aaron Shaw with $9.99 says, all the best for the future. Thank you. That's Shah, like the rightfully installed ruler of Iran, in whose absence we are now seeing absolute chaos in the streets. All right. So All right, let's jump back over to memory lane. And congratulations to Ayn Rand Center UK on all these super chats, by the way. I hope you guys are ordering steak tonight. I developed full-blown Trump derangement syndrome on this show during and after the 2020 election. So I guess that was like, we started this show in like March or something of 2020, and then here comes October, November, finally the election time, and I see Trump just declare his own victory at night, the evening of the election. And I just said, good Lord, now I get it. Now I get it. It's not about policy. It's not about anything as much as it's about method. When you have a person who is beholden to no facts, when you have a person who is motivated by no logic and no rules, but simply his own capricious whims, that is a scary type of person to have in political power. And that doesn't mean Trump would ever use that power to do something atrocious per se. But the fact that somebody that blatantly whimsical and capricious could be elected is something new in American history, I realized. And we can talk all day about everything that's been wrong up until Trump in American politics. You're preaching to the choir if you bring that up. I get it. And all of the previous, administrations and Congresses paved the way for Trump. So, he's a quote product of the environment, if you like. But I realized method is everything. Epistemology is what makes or breaks a philosophy in a very big way, right? So if your method of arriving at your conclusion is capricious, faith-based, whatever it is, socially based, like you're just getting it from the group, you're on the opposite end of objectivism, right? So the objectivist epistemology is, of course, reason, observe, objectively conceptualize, integrate, and, and act accordingly. And the opposite of the truth is not falsehood. The opposite of truth is the arbitrary. I don't know if objectivism puts it quite that way or not, but that's what I'm saying here today. The opposite of the truth is the arbitrary. Aaron, again, with 499 says, and I missed it, what channels can we find you doing commentary going forward? And then Ayn Rand Center UK plugged it. It's, Rucka Live is the channel. Again, like I said earlier, not everyone is always going to get my humor. The stream of consciousness can be a little bit satirical and hard to swallow at times. But again, like I said, it could take more of a disciplined and intellectual turn if there's sort of demand or a sort of engagement that goes in that direction. And plus, let's face it, I'll be missing this. I'm going to miss this. So I imagine I'll be using the platforms I have to do that. So yeah, Trump, I grew to hate Trump or to hate what he represents. I don't, here's the thing. I don't hate Trump. Like, he's not important enough for me to hate. Isn't that like the ultimate insult? I don't care enough about him to hate. I hate the fact that he could win and that people could behave the way they do in support of him. And that brings us to January 6th, right at the beginning of 2021, which, I told you how the BLM riots made me so disheartened and sad in a city like LA, which I had grown to love. And that was where the thought of leaving LA began to kind of develop in my mind, which I kind of thought I was going to stay in LA possibly forever. I love the city and it's a wonderful place. And I thought I was probably going to live there forever. The thought of leaving LA kind of began with the civil unrest that took place there. Jumping over to January 6, 2021, that's when I started thinking maybe just the United States altogether is not really what I thought it was, or not the place that it used to be or whatever, right? So I actually started thinking of leaving the USA. So first, I fall out of love with LA because of the BLM riots, and then January 6th happens, and I'm like, is this even my country? Is this the America I fell in love with as a child, and cared so much about living in and staying in? So yeah, I remember I was watching, season 3 of Fauda was on Netflix during that time, and I remember remarking maybe I'll just move back to Israel, right? Why not? that idea did not go very far. I'm going to stick around, but I did end up moving to Austin, and that was kind of something I sort of shared in real time here on the internet. And I think the initial idea was to move to Vegas. I thought, hey, I'll move to Vegas, not too far from LA. And then I kind of realized Vegas is like cool for one day or something, but just the thought, imagine being in Vegas, you move to Vegas and you're like on the strip and you go out to the casinos and okay, jump forward to 1 week and you're just like, shit, I'm stuck in Vegas now. And where am I going to go? To the desert or to the desert? Oh, Rhett with 9.99 says, sorry about Rabbit Hole. I was hoping you would comment about religious metaphysics and keeping certain areas of one's life separate. Highly recommend Rucka Live. Well, thanks for plugging me. I was hoping you would comment about religious metaphysics and keeping certain areas of one's life separate. Yeah, so that, I mean, that's something I've been, thinking about it a lot. So this has been a very introspective experience for me. And, this is going to continue wherever I am. And I'm always, I think, going to be speaking philosophy and specifically the introspective element, understanding metaphysics, especially. Metaphysics is undersung, underappreciated, and maybe understudied. And I try, we got into it a little bit last time. Seth Levine was on, another friend I made here on the show. There's something about the religious metaphysics that's just like very much informed by, the Plato perspective, which is like there's something perfect somewhere, something perfect. God is perfect, creates the world, poof. Like when that's what you're told as a child, you come to have this very kind of like absolutist perspective. Now, absolutes do exist, of course. Reality is an absolute. Reason is an absolute in ethics, right? It needs to be. However, a lot of facts that we're kind of evaluating or assessing are going to be nuanced in reality, or, not as easy to categorize in absolute terms. So what's the ultimate absolute to hold in mind? I say life and death. Life and death. That's kind of like the barometer, right? Like life and death. I mean, happiness is a barometer in the emotional level. But when getting hyperbolic in my mind, when I get carried away, when I start to paint as an artist, forgetting that reality is not exactly a work of art, I kind of remind myself, okay, come back to just life and death. Is this type of thinking bringing me closer to a good life? Is this preserving my life and enhancing it? Or is this type of thinking sort of chipping away at the energy I have and kind of driving me towards a Platonist metaphysics, which is death? Hope that made a little bit of sense. And that's the kind of thing you get, you hanging around me long enough. Seamus with $5 says, thank you. Thank you, Seamus. I've always wanted to say that name, but rarely had the opportunity. All right, we're running out of time here. I gotta, not hearing a lot of memories from you guys. Do you guys have any memories? Let me scroll a bit. I didn't see any in the super chat, but just scrolling through the chat, I don't really see. Okay, Sammy says the best episode is the one where I got stuck. See, there was a wonderful memory, with Pellegrino as the host. I remember he laughed very hard. I saw in the playback afterwards. I was like suddenly glitching. And, that was a wonderful moment. When the movie is made about this show and about the network, I think that moment will definitely be written into it. All right. So, okay, I hate Trump. January 6th made me question if I even want to live in America anymore. I think I've played a good part despite my excitement as an artist. I think I played a good role in containing the excitement and the temptation that, we have to say, this is East Germany, right? This is, they're evil. Okay. Yes. Yes, there's a lot of evil in this world, but there's also a lot of little people, quote unquote, that is people who are not career intellectuals, and they've been led astray by the intellectual leaders. It's like, I don't know, I really try to find, empathy and sympathy and be patient and accept that, just like it's taken me so long to kind of find my way and to face certain things, and all of you took you a while and is going to take you a while to face certain harsh truths in this world. not everybody is going to immediately embrace this thrilling new philosophy that Ayn Rand offered. A lot of them, they're using their bravery, they're using their courageous capital on other things in their own lives. A lot of them, right? So, all right, let's. Wyatt says maybe you could keep that benevolent spirit when it comes to the right. Well, you know what? I actually do. Believe it or not, like I'm friends with people who are like, you know, they think Tucker Carlson is doing great work, and that's kind of something else I have to contend with in life. Like in LA, pretty much any new friend I'm going to make in LA is probably going to think BLM is great. And outside of LA and hanging around, you know, internet edgy people or whatever, political commentators, you're gonna, you know, form an emotional, spiritual bond with people who have truly wrong beliefs or knowledge and stuff. So, you know, I don't like the idea of condemning all right-wingers like they're all evil, of course. But just like we condemn the intellectual leaders of society, we say it's the intellectual leaders who have cheated most people. They have reneged on their responsibility. Definitely the political voices on the right, the Daily Wire, Steven Crowder, I mean, you name it. I'm highly disappointed in them. They know they can do better. They know, I mean, just to think, you know, in like 10 years ago, Ben Shapiro was on Piers Morgan saying, don't lump me in with Alex Jones. And that today, Ben Shapiro has a network of Alex Joneses, basically. I mean, it's just constant, like, oh, Democrats stealing elections. Oh, Democrats, oh, the vaccine, don't get vaccinated. It's like, come on, really? You can't save liberty by actually being a respectable human being, like actually having intellectual integrity. Regina has been a member for 9 months. It says, thanks for everything. Oh, well, thank you, Regina. Big fan, by the way, Regina Skepter, I'm assuming. Back to the sort of trip down memory lane. Wouldn't it be funny if this final episode ends with me in a yelling match with the chat room about the right versus the left or whatever? Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about the right and the left, but like, it's like we know the left is bad, right? I mean, it's all been discussed before. Zombie with 499 says favorite parts of ARCUK are the Rucka plus Nico's episodes. Oh, that's certainly one opinion. There's definitely room for disagreement. As great as those are, there's, you know, what about a good Honig and I episode? And there's always Pellegrino and me. Wyatt says that can become an excuse to give the left a pass while they're winning. Well, it can become that, but that's not what it is. It's I'm advocating for something positive. I'm saying if you're not going to be rational, you're no friend of mine. And yes, unfortunately, the Democrats, the left, whatever it is, they're going to win elections and they're going to continue to gain probably a lot of cultural relevance. I mean, that could swing back against them. Hopefully, the average Joe out there who wants nothing to do with Trump also seems to not want the woke stuff. And once corporations kind of get that memo, they might cool down with some of their virtue signaling. Look, ultimately, it's not about any of them. Ultimately, it's about something positive. So we're offering something positive here. All right, trip down memory lane as we wrap this up. Mark says $2, are you going to close with the song? Stick around and find out. So then what happened? And no summary of the Daily Objective history would be complete without this. Do you know what I'm going to say? Did you guess it? I'll give you a hint. That's right. I got COVID-19. And, you know, in a way, it felt like we got COVID-19. And, you know, and it brought us closer together. It gave us something to talk about. We all got to sort of joke around about it. Wyatt says, you were a trooper during those episodes. Thank you. See, we're all getting along great here. Yeah, no, thank you. That was, you know, I remember Rozzy, I tweeted, I said, I have COVID-19. Please buy my merch, like link below. And Rozzy, I think, just like didn't even schedule me. He assumed I couldn't host. And I called him up and said, what's going on? He was like, I thought you just can't. Oh, it's like, what do you mean? COVID lasts like 3 weeks. So you were just, I was not going to host for like 3 weeks. I was on, if I'm able to talk and I'm staying home anyway, why not host? Right. Now there's COVID and there's COVID. You know, some people lose their taste buds. They really, really got sick. I had like, it felt like a bad sore throat. Oh, it doesn't really lend itself to the idea that I was able to host without any problems. But also it was mostly fine. It was moments of pain attacks, the chest stuff, the feeling of like I imagine this is what going into labor is like. It's like all you can think about is just breathing. Like I could not think about anything. I could imagine so many horrible situations where that would have happened when people were around and they would try to help, quote unquote. And they're like, "Are you okay? Get your hand off me." I wouldn't even be able to say that to them. Imagine if I was driving and I pull over and I'm just like, you know, going through this panic attack in my car. And then like a cop walks over, "Excuse me, sir, what's going on?" You know, and then we have another police brutality situation on our hand as I'm basically suffering intensely. I don't know if those pain attacks lasted 10 minutes or 1 minute or what. I just remember time stood still, as the objectivist adjacent band Rush would sing. Time stand still. There you go, Mark Moses. All right, so I got COVID. All right, a couple other highlights that I will mention. And there's a lot I'm leaving out today because I just kind of went with like first things that occurred to me. And I figured some of you would have some more memories you would come up with. But I guess the internet never forgets, quote unquote. But that's only when someone's getting canceled, right? Like when somebody's in trouble, that's when the internet remembers every last detail. But other than that, like, I'm like, hey, think of any good times? They're just like radio silence. So Paul Gay was a guest that I was really excited to have on. I didn't know who he was until moments before we went live that day, but he directed, or not directed, he produced, he wrote, whatever it is. He was one of two men behind The Little Rascals. That was an important film. For me as a kid, you know, you've heard me talk about a very, very strict religious background. And to me, like, before there was internet, before there was YouTube, before there was all these entertainers competing for your attention, getting your hands on one VHS tape was like an historical moment. It was like, you know, the main character in Anthem discovering a book. The Little Rascals was a very benevolent film. It spoke to relatable stuff to me because I was a little boy, and here were a bunch of boys who, like, they hated the girls, and, you know, but one of them liked the girl. So obviously that's relatable to a sort of confused boy who on one hand feels this sort of resentment, but on the other hand, Loki is kind of likes girls as well. You know, religion definitely made that whole issue a very psychologically confusing one. You know, the Orthodox Jews, the real Orthodox, not Ben Shapiro, you know, flirting with women on Twitter all day and then, you know, taking pictures with hot Republican chicks around the country. Not those types of Jews. Real Jews, as meant to borrow a phrase from Shapiro. Real Jews, real Orthodox Jews. They don't touch the opposite sex. They don't sit next to the opposite sex. They barely look the opposite sex in the eye if it's not their spouse, and sometimes not even that, not even their spouse. So, you know, the genders were segregated in my upbringing, you know, from like age 4, basically, in school. And it was, you know, it was not a very normal experience compared to a lot of people. So, yeah, you know, The Little Rascals was, here's this movie about kids. They're loving life, they're having fun, and they're going through these changes in life that are raising certain issues. And Alfalfa, he tells his friends, at one point he goes, "I like girls." And his friend, not Bucky. Bucky was the African-American gentleman or young man. It was, who's the guy who wore a yarmulke for some reason on The Little Rascals? Spanky. Spanky said, yeah, there we go. Christopher said it. Spanky says, "I know you like girls, Alfalfa. The problem is rules are rules." And Alfalfa says, well, why do we have to be a club because we hate something? Like, can't we be a club because we like something? And I remember thinking, like, no, that sounds lame, right? Like, we're a club because we do. But now I get it. It's like, whoa, that was a impact. That was in a, indirectly. That's like the objectivist value driven approach to the world there in one sentence. Can't we be a club because we like something? So yeah, the Little Rascals, brings back memories of joy, and to be here, getting to talk to its creator and to grill him about the scene with Mel Brooks playing a banker who denies a loan to one man, and then two Hasidic Jews walk in, and he's just, he goes, have sit down. What can I do for you? Yeah, how much money do you need? I had some questions on that day. Thank you, Emily, for the super chat. So that was amazing. And of course, he also produced Liar, Liar, the Jim Carrey film. I mean, Jim Carrey to me was another huge, important figure. The Mask. I mean, I can do a full episode here just talking about The Mask. It embellishes, it brings out your innermost character, I guess. Like, so Jim Carrey in The Mask puts on the mask, becomes a super fearless cartoon character. It's like who he really wants to be. Whereas the bad guy puts on the mask and becomes even meaner and more cruel. It's a wonderful movie. I mean, the animation, right? The 1995 CGI effects in The Mask were incredible, life-changing. Wyatt says that movie made Cameron Diaz too. Oh yeah, Wyatt, the left, the right, who cares? We can all agree Cameron Diaz in The Mask was an important moment in any young man's childhood. Along with Heartbreakers, another movie that Paul Gay made. I think it was called Heartbreakers, with Jennifer Love Hewitt plays a conning. She and her mother in the movie play like a deceptive duo who like make men fall in love with them in order to, trick them into adultery, whatever. This whole scheme in order to get their money. And there again, another movie that shows you that lying is not the best policy. Lying is not the way. Honesty or pursuit of values is the way. So you can see objectivist ethics permeating the culture in places you would least suspect. All right. Let me take a sip of my tea. Another highlight of this series has most definitely been the series of interviews I did with Jason Rines. He is one of the greats. Again, objectivism is a small handful of experts, but I think he's definitely on that very short list. So that those episodes were very dense, and that was just a wonderful thing to be able to participate in. It's really cool to be in a position where I don't need to know stuff, but I just need to ask the right questions and get people talking. So that was another highlight for sure. All right. So thank you for joining us today. I am, it is my birthday. I'm, doing a little bit small dinner later, and tomorrow I'm flying to another city where, among other things I'm going to the city for, I will be having another like mini birthday dinner. So it's wonderful to have. I hate to say it. I really hate to say the government don't want to see, but if Roosevelt was living, he wouldn't let this be. It's like, Michael, you're being accused of doing something that, we all agree is wrong, right? Like, he goes, your proclamation gave me liberty. Michael, these kids are saying you did something that the proclamation, emancipation, does not permit you to do. But I love that song. They don't care about us. I listen to it on repeat. Even though you don't have to, I disagree with it philosophically. It's very them versus us, and we need Roosevelt now more than ever. It's bullshit. He blames the Jews at one point, which is, he censored the K word out of there, due to public outcry. But still, it's art. It's poetry. I didn't want him to censor it. I wouldn't have had him censor it. It's art. We need to be able to hear it or whatever. We need to be able to answer it philosophically. So anyway, as I was saying, I really hate to say it, but it's kind of a good idea to have a little bit of a trip, a little bit of travel lined up if you're going to break up with somebody, you know? Make sure it's the right decision, but then it doesn't hurt to get on a plane soon after and kind of change the scenery a little bit. So this right here is a breakup. But unlike a romantic breakup, I will plant a little bit of hope in you and say, hey, maybe we'll get back together someday, because it could happen. It could happen. But if this was a romantic type of breakup, I would not give any type of hint, because it's, you know, it's cruel, and it's also, you can't really know that type of thing. And it's not the way. It's not the way. So in business, I think it's perfectly fine to say, hey, maybe we'll get back together in the future. And this is a kind of more of a business type of breakup. Okay, I'll in the minute we have left, I will leave you with a quote by the enigmatic Michael Malice. I think he once said to an anti-Semite, he said, if there were no Jews, you would still be a janitor. Isn't that a powerful line? If there were no Jews, you would still be a janitor. So don't blame the world for your station in life. So I will say to the objectivists, to whom this applies, if we lived in a rational society, if objectivism were prevalent, if we had capitalism and all that, you would still be a weirdo. So work on that now, here in this timeline, you know? You're not going to magically become like this really cool guy because the world becomes rational. It actually gets, you know, you could fall farther behind if other people are getting it. All right, and that's all we have to say. I really have to say about that, to quote Forrest Gump. Upcoming today, it's coming up today at 7 p.m. UK time in just a couple minutes. You know, it wouldn't be a daily objective on a Friday without a hard stop at, you know, the bottom of the hour for Finance Friday with Jim Brown on financial repression, the disease and the cure. And on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. UK time, the Objective Communication Study Group with James Valiant for ARC UK members. The session will also be live streamed to YouTube members. All right. Again, thank you, everybody, for everything. You know, there's never enough time to really go over everything and to say everything. There's a lot of things I know we wanted to say that we didn't get to say. Again, if you can't live without me and you want to hear more of my wonderful thoughts, I do have a live streaming channel, Rucka Live. And there you can learn more about my thoughts on stuff and about other projects I'm working on, and all of that. And of course, anyone can get a hold of me anytime you want. My social media DMs are open and all of that. So I have a website. I mean, you can get a hold of me if there's anything you wanted to say that we didn't, you know, that is, you know, that you want to say. So don't hesitate, unless you're weird, in which case, maybe hesitate. All right. And my final message to the objectivist community is something I never really told you. I am Dan Norton. Subscribe to me on YouTube. This is a gift I got myself for my birthday. It really has nothing to do with Dan Norton. But yeah, I like him. So check him out on YouTube. I really was hoping this would work a bit better. Here, it's like... On that very strange note, thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for Jim Brown, and don't want to step on his time. He does not look like somebody I would fare well in a, you know, fist-to-fist altercation with. And force is not the way. Everybody, it's been wonderful. I'm not going to filibuster on Jim's time. Thank you all. Love you all. You love me. We're a happy family. And goodbye.